أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Okay, the next part of the video I'll be going through a few examples in the Qur'an. The two examples I've chosen is word precision and precision in structure. And they're very small examples, they're minor examples. The first example is going to require a bit of knowledge of Arabic grammar. The next examples after that regarding structure will be very straightforward, inshallah. Okay, let's have a look at this verse. I'll read it in Arabic, then I'll read the translation, and then I'll go through and we'll examine the verse. إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم ذلك دين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم. And I've cut the last part of the verse because it's not relevant to our discussion. But it's in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 36, and it says, surely the number of months with Allah is 12. In Allah's ordinance, since the day when we created the heavens and the earth. Of these 4 being sacred, that is the right reckoning, therefore be not unjust to yourselves regarding them. Now, I'm not going through any tafsir or the meanings of these verses, we're just taking this from a linguistic perspective. Now, what I want to draw attention to is the word الشهور, which is a plural. It is a broken plural. So the singular for it is shahr, which means 1 month or just month, and shuhur means months. Now, what I also want to draw attention to is this pronoun here, ha, minha. In the English, it's this pronoun. This will represent this part here. And also, I'll just change the color and highlight this pronoun here. So we have ha and hinna. This one is hinna, and it's them. And they're both actually referring to the same word, which is ash-shuhur. So the question is, why was it once referred to in the singular, which are highlighted in the red, and why was it referred in the plural in the blue? This will take some Arabic grammar, so I'll just go through the rule in one of the grammar books that I found. For female plurals, probably a bit too difficult for some people to understand, but the point of it, you can read through it. I'm not going to go actually through the details of this, but what I'll do is I'll just explain the examples. So the first example here, we have al-muslimatu ja'at aw ji'na. So this O means or. So what it means is you can actually say al-muslimatu ja'at aw ji'na. Either one would be correct. And as we know, al-muslimatu is a jama' muannath salim. It's a sound feminine plural. And the second example, which I've done in red, this example here, is a broken plural, ashjar, which means trees. And similarly, you can use the feminine singular or the feminine plural, as in the above example. So regardless of it being broken plural or a sound plural, they both can actually take the feminine singular or the feminine plural. Now the thing is, when can they take it? They can take it when there's a pronoun that goes back to it. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it. So for example, let's take the first example. We'll use the bottom example, since we're dealing with broken plurals. Is you have a verb here, قطع, and then you have the ta'nith, and inbuilt into this verb is the pronoun here. Sorry, I can't. Here is built into it, and that goes back to ashjar. Similarly, nun niswa is also plural, which also goes back to al-ashjar. So you can use either one. Now the question is, what's the difference between the two? I'll explain the difference briefly. It's called jama' qilla and jama' kathra. Now jama' qilla means the lesser plural, meaning less in number, and jama' kathra means the greater plural, which means it's greater in number. So if I said al-ashjaru quti'at, it means a lot of ashjar, a lot of trees got cut. But I said al-ashjaru quti'na, much less. And scholars say the lesser plural is between 1 and 9, and the greater plural is from 10 and above. But it's not always the case. The feminine singular is always used as a greater plural. Let's go back to the example. So, the first, as we can see, the first instance, as I said over here, I'll just point it, is minha. So it's minha arba'atun hurum. In them, or in these, 4 being sacred. So this is actually the greater plural. So we'll put up a plus for that. Here, فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسُكُمْ, and do not be unjust to yourselves regarding them. Hunna. This is the lesser plural. I'll put a negative sign to indicate less. So the question is, why was the greater plural used here, and why was lesser plural used here? It comes down to which is greater in number. Over here, we're talking about minha, we're talking about all 12 months. So we're saying from the 12 months, 4 are hurum, are sacred. 4 of them are sacred. Okay? Now, I told you before that the greater plural is 10 and over, so, but however, that's not always the case, but usually. So, that's why it's got the greater plural. And now, this one here, فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ, it's not talking about all 12 months, it's talking about do not oppress yourselves regarding those 4 months of hurum, these months. Arba'atu hurumun. So over here it's referring to just 4 months, and that's why the hunna was used. So this is just one example to demonstrate how precise Qur'an Arabic is. It's very sensitive. So, and the Arabic language, actually classical Arabic, was very sensitive. I mean, to get the precise word and the precise structure of a sentence was very difficult, because the Arabic language is so dynamic and so customizable. I'll explain a bit more about that in later lessons. So that's the first example about word precision. Let's move on. Okay, so let's move on to the precision in the structure. So the Quran is very precise in its structure, and I've got two examples to share. Now, scholars actually have written a lot about the structure of the Quran. It's a very precise structure. Now, there have been many Orientalists and critics of the Quran which say that the Quran is just random. It's random. Stories are mentioned here. It switches between 10 different stories, and they say it's very disorganized. But nothing can be further from the truth. Actually, it just needs a bit of, study and analysis, and to see the structure is beauty in itself. Okay, let's get to the examples. So I've called this the connection between Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Baqarah. So between surahs, there's actually connection between the end of one surah and the beginning of another surah. So I'm just going to highlight this connection. So in Surah Al-Fatiha, the end of it is اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us to pray for the most important thing, which is the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to guide us to the straight path. This is the greatest of blessings, and the greatest blessing a Muslim can have. If we look at Surah Al-Baqarah, the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, it's amazing actually. It's after Alif Lam Mim. It says ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So it's saying He's the guidance. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us to make the prayer for guidance, and then He's in the next surah, the beginning of the next surah, He's saying He's the guidance for you. Subhanallah. It's brilliant, the structure. Okay, now we move to the next example. The connection between Surah Al-Nahl and Surah Al-Isra. I really like this one. So I've put the last verse of Surah Al-Nahl on top, and then the first verse of Surah Al-Isra. So the last verse of Surah Al-Nahl says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Verily Allah is with those who have awareness of Allah and who do good. Sorry, the first verse of Surah Al-Isra is سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. It's amazing. All these verses are amazing. I'm actually going to go through parts of Surah Al-Isra in some of the videos I'm producing. They're just really beautiful. This is one of the verses I'm going to go through in a lot of detail. But just for this example, I just want to highlight something, and that is the last verse of Surah Al-Nahl says إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. So it's talking about those who are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's with those who fear Allah and who do good. And the next verse is talking about exactly the same topic, but specifically the greatest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatest one who had taqwa, the greatest creation who was a muhsin, and who reached the highest station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no doubt the night journey of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was with him all the way in closeness, and then he ascended to the seventh heaven and went to Sidratul Muntaha, and no creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reached that level. And it's like the previous verse, or the last verse of Surah Al-Nahl, was a general verse, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is specifically talking about the greatest of those mentioned in the last verse of Surah Al-Nahl, who was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah. Some concluding remarks. So the Quran was revealed over 23 years in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now it should be noted that consistently saying something in the most eloquent manner over a 23-year period is impossible for human beings. someone might get a moment of inspiration to write something, but to do this consistently over 2 decades with all the social, political, economic problems and responsibilities, and at the same time being illiterate, not being able to read and write. So all these things make the miracle even greater. If he had been able to write, or if he used to recite poetry prior to being chosen as the final messenger, all these things would have reduced in the miracle. But the fact that he wasn't known for being able to recite poetry, he was just a normal person with exceptional character, and he was known as Al-Amin for his truthfulness. And also the Quran was dictated word for word, and now imagine how much harder it would be to know that the order that it was revealed in was not the same order that it was written down in the Quran. Taking all this into consideration, what possible explanation could anyone have about the Quran? If we see its miraculous and supernatural qualities, there is no other choice but to consider it a miracle. Now, there are people out there that reject the Quran, and the main reason is because they don't see it as a miracle. They see it as a book, a religious book, and a lot of Muslims see it as just a religious book. I would just like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me this opportunity to present to you some of the research I have done over the few years. And also it should be noted that the Quran is first and foremost a guidance for Muslims. But I say it's a miracle at the same time. And the Sahaba and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the early Muslims didn't just experience the guidance from their Creator, but saw the miracle of it in each and every word they read and recited. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us benefit and to inspire us to learn the language of the Quran, and for us to experience Allah's living miracle that is with us today. ربنا هب لنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.